Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today we shall be starting pericardium and heart. Pericardium is a very important topic, not only from the clinical point of view, but also from examination point of view. There are many questions that are asked in the MCQs and SCQs. SCQs are short answer questions, or they are also called short essay type of questions. So they are small objective type of questions where you are supposed to write brief details regarding the topic asked in the written paper. And the marks assigned to each SAQ or SCQ usually vary from 3 marks to 5 marks. So pericardium is one of very important topics and commonly asked question in the MCQs and SAQs and during the viva by the senior professors in the final professional exams or semester exams. So let's start with the very basic. What is pericardium? Pericardium is located within the middle mediastinum. Pericardium is located within the middle mediastinum. What type of membrane is it? Or what type of structure is it? It's a fibroserous sac or fibroserous membrane. Same thing. What does fibroserous mean? It means that pericardium consists of two types of layers. Outermost is fibrous and innermost is called serous. So pericardium is a structure comprising of a fibrous layer outside and serous layer inside. And it encloses heart and roots of the great vessels. Now, what vessels are called great vessels? Aorta, pulmonary trunk, superior vena cava, and inferior vena cava. So you must be clear that not all the vessels of the body are called great vessels. The major vessels that are either arising or entering the heart, they are labeled as great vessels. And these vessels include aorta, pulmonary trunk, inferior vena cava, and superior vena cava. So what is pericardium? It is located in the middle mediastinum. It's a fibroserous sac or membrane enclosing the heart and roots of the great vessels and is located within the middle mediastinum. So the diagram on the right side of the slide, you can see that a cut section, a sagittary cut section is taken from the surface of the heart enclosed in the pericardium to show and it is magnified to show the different arrangement of the different layers. So let's see, outermost fibrous layer. This you can see, please note down the thickness of each of the layers surrounding the heart or making up the pericardium. Fibrous pericardium, as you can see in this enhanced or magnified section of the diagram, it is not only outermost, but just compare its thickness with the rest of the layers surrounding the heart. It is a very thick layer, outermost thick layer. This is why, because of its thickness, it is considered to be one of the strongest layers of pericardium. I hope this point is clear. Now, from moving outward to inward, on the inner side of the fibrous layer is located another layer, which is called serous membrane. Now, this serous membrane, as you can see in the diagram, this serous membrane comprises of two layers. It comprises of further two layers. The layer just located inside to the fibrous pericardium is labeled as parietal layer of the pericardium or the serous pericardium. And the layer that is closely attached or closely invested with the surface of the heart itself is called visceral layer. Viscera meaning organ. So the layer that is closely related with the surface of an organ is called visceral layer of the serous membrane. Also note down another significant point in order to understand the concept of this serous membrane, because beta, not only you are going to study this serous membrane in the pericardium, but also you will, or you must have studied the same serous layer in pleura, and you will study inshallah ta'ala same serous layer that surrounds the abdominal wall, and there it is labeled as peritoneum. Fine. The same serous layer, when it encloses the lungs, is labeled as pleura. When it closes the abdomen, it is labeled as peritoneum. And when it labels the or it surrounds the heart, it is labeled as part of the pericardium. I hope this point is clear to everybody. The next point that is of great significance is to understand the serous layer. Let me define serous layer for you. Serous membrane is a specialized type of membrane that is lined by a specialized type of epithelium called mesothelium. So mesothelium is a specialized type of epithelium that lines the serous membrane, whether in pleura, whether around the pericardium, or whether in the abdomen as peritoneum. So the epithelium of the serous layer or membrane is called mesothelium. Its cells are specialized to produce fluid. So in case of pleura, the fluid is called pleural fluid. In the peritoneum, the fluid is called peritoneal fluid. And in the pericardium, what is the fluid called? Pericardial fluid. And also, it is a single membrane, if you notice where my cursor is pointing out. Look, follow the arrow of my cursor. You can see that the visceral layer, after covering the surface of the heart, is becoming continuous with the parietal layer that is lining or shown to be lining the internal surface of which outer layer? Fibrous pericardium. So basically, these two layers are part of single layer, or they are in fact a single layer. How do they become two layers? For that, let me show you another diagram. Look in this diagram. Look in this diagram. How the fist of the hand is shown to be punching within the pericardium, right? And now you can see how the serous membrane has been divided into two layers. The layer that is in close relation with the fist of the hand is labeled as which layer of the serous membrane? Visceral layer. And the membrane that is outside the fist, around the periphery of the fist, is labeled as parietal layer. But basically, it is a single layer. Fine. And between these two layers lies the cavity filled with the fluid. Fine. Similar is the case with the pleura, and similar is the case with the development of peritoneum. So the serous membrane is just like what? A balloon. When you punch into the wall of the balloon, which is filled with either air or water, if you punch in it, the surface of the balloon that is closely related with your fist is labeled as visceral layer, and rest of the surface of the balloon is labeled as parietal layer. I hope this point is clear. In this diagram, you can see the structure of the pericardium. As I mentioned earlier, the structure of pericardium is that it comprises of two layers of the pericardium. The pericardium comprises of two layers. Outermost is the fibrous layer, which is the thickest and strongest, and underneath or deep to it is the layer called serous pericardium, and it further comprises of a parietal layer that lines the inner surface of the fibrous pericardium, and a visceral layer that closely is invested around the surface of the heart. And between these two layers is the cavity filled with fluid, which is called pericardial cavity, and the fluid is called pericardial fluid, and this fluid is secreted by the mesothelial cells lining the serous membrane, parietal and visceral. So please note down another point that is important from examination point of view. The question in the examination can be asked that briefly describe the structure of pericardium. So how are you going to start your answer? Pericardium, first of all, you are going to define the pericardium, and secondly, you will start the structure of the pericardium, further comprises of two layers. So please pay attention to the terminology that is asked in the questions, SAQs especially, because many alternative terms or words are used to ask the same thing. But students often confuse the alternative terms and they get the meaning wrong. Hence, they attempt the question wrongly or incorrectly. So please do not confuse the alternative terms with other terms. So keep such alternative or synonym of the words in your mind while attempting the questions. Now, let's move on to description of these layers one by one. Let's start with the outermost layer. The outermost layer is called fibrous layer. It is outermost in location and it is considered to be strongest because of its thickness. Now, what are the attachments of the fibrous layer? Anteriorly and inferiorly and posteriorly, as well as superiorly. So 4 attachments: anterior, inferior, posterior, and superior. Now, in this diagram, this is the anterior aspect of the pericardium, showing the anterior thoracic wall in the midline, comprising of sternum bone. You know that sternum is the midline bone, anterior midline bone in the thoracic wall. So, how is pericardium attached to the anterior thoracic wall? With the help of ligament called sternopericardial ligament. This ligament is in 2 parts: inferior sternopericardial ligament and superior sternopericardial ligament. Superior sternopericardial ligament attaches the anterior surface of the heart with the pericardium with the manubrium sterni, and inferior sternopericardial ligament attaches the pericardium to the xiphoid process of the sternum. So this is the anterior attachment of the fibrous pericardium. What about inferior attachment? Inferiorly, the fibrous pericardium, here this line you can see, this one. If you follow my cursor, this line that is green in color, follow this line. This is the anterior side and this is the posterior side, and overall this is the sagittal section of the thorax. So inferiorly is the diaphragm. Fibrous pericardium inferiorly is fused with the superior surface of the diaphragm, and here this fusion is labeled or given another name called pericardiophrenik ligament. Phrenic refers to diaphragm, pericardio refers to pericardium and heart. So I'm again repeating the attachments. Anteriorly, this fibrous pericardium is attached to the sternum with the help of inferior and superior sternopericardial ligament with xiphoid process and manubrium sterni of the sternum respectively. Inferiorly, it is attached with the superior surface or dome of the diaphragm with the help of fusion of fibrous pericardium with the dome of the diaphragm, and this fusion is given another name called phrenico-pericardial ligament. Fine. Now, superiorly. Superiorly, if you follow the fibrous layer, you will see that superiorly the fibrous layer is becoming fused with the external surface of the great vessels of the heart. That is tunica adventitia. You must remember that a vessel wall has three layers: tunica intima, innermost; tunica media, middle; and outermost is called tunica externa or adventitia of the great vessels. So superiorly, fibrous pericardium gets attached to the tunica adventitia and to the pretracheal layer of the deep fascia of the neck region. So here we have in this diagram, this is again a sagittal section showing you the fusion of the pretracheal fascia, which is basically another part of deep cervical fascia. Cervical refers to the neck. So it is the deep fascia, one of the parts or layers of the deep fascia of the neck that is descending down to finally getting fused with the fibrous pericardium in front of the trachea. I hope this point is clear to everyone. What about posteriorly? Posteriorly, the pericardium, fibrous pericardium, is fused with the connective tissue that is attaching it to the posterior mediastinum. So posteriorly, fibrous pericardium blends with the connective tissue that connects it with the contents of the posterior mediastinum. I hope these attachments are clear to everyone.